Hello, everyone. Welcome to your show, Curryup Startup Podcast, a podcast to spotlight world class Asian entrepreneurs, C suite executives, and inspiring people who provide insights from their personal journey to inspire you. And this is your host, Priyanka Komala, on your 52nd episode of Curryup Startup Podcast. And to our listeners, do subscribe to us by following me, Priyanka Komala, on LinkedIn, as well as our Curryup Startup Podcast page for your LinkedIn live notifications. We're also on YouTube, Twitter, and your favorite podcast streaming platforms. Today, I have with me an exciting guest, Shital Kakkar, who's joining us from India. Hi, Shital. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Priyanka. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you so much, Sheetal. So, Sheetal is a leadership coach who coaches CEOs across the world on executive presence. What better way to bring her to our episode and engage her with our listeners globally? We're super excited to have you, Sheetal.
Thank you. It's a pleasure and an honor. Thanks so much, Priyanka.
Awesome. So, to our listeners who are tuning in, please drop a hello and let us know where you're tuning in from. And we do have a special gift for our listeners today. Sheetal will be giving out three free mentoring sessions for three lucky winners, one each, as part of this episode. So, put your hat on for putting out a favorite question as well as a awesome comment for a chance to win this free mentoring session with Sheetal. So, Sheetal, without further ado, I'm going to get started to help our listeners understand more about who you are. So, Sheetal is one of India's leading executive presence coaches for CEOs. She has over 20 years of experience under her belt and has personally trained over 55,000 professionals across Asia, including numerous CEOs from leading multinational companies and domestic companies as well. She's an acclaimed public speaker and a best selling author. She's worked with hundreds of CXOs and star performers, helping them enhance their executive presence. And her work in this field has led to India's first ever research based model, which is called the POISE Formula on Executive Presence. She also has her second book, Executive Presence, the POISE Formula for Leadership, which was recently published. And super excited, Sheetal, to have you on the show. And can you give us a sneak peek about the Executive Presence book? Can you just wave it to our audience?
I have it right here. Thank you. And yes, it's done well. Made it to the bestseller list of Amazon based on pre-order numbers. So thanks, Priyanka.
That's awesome. So, Sheetal, we have some listeners tuning in, and I wanted to acknowledge them. We have Jyoti, who's tuning in from India, who's very excited for the session ahead. Jyoti, thanks so much for joining us. And do put your favorite comment or a great question here for a chance to win a free mentoring session with Sheetal herself. And she's such an amazing person to get to know, as well as a fabulous coach, no matter which leadership level you are in. So, thanks so much. All right, Sheetal, one thing I've always thought about is with this pandemic, we all are in lockdown mode and executive presence still needs to happen. And one of the challenges for executive presence is how do you project yourself virtually? So I wanted to ask you, how do you manifest executive presence in the virtual world? What is one takeaway for our listeners here?
Super. I think you have to look at it on three parameters. One, of course, is the visual. Now, it's very interesting, but we are only seeing people's bodies, which is like one third, sometimes even one fourth of the human body. So, a lot of body language signals could be gesturing, could be fidgeting, could be movement is compromised. So, I think we need to focus more on the vocal and the verbal. So, people have to speak louder, people have to speak in a crisper, clearer way, and also compensate for the lack of body language. So that's very important. So the style of communication has changed, evolved. Secondly, I think the visual has become also very important. So your background, how you're projecting on screen, what is the distance, the lighting, so that people can communicate, see your facial expressions, because a lot of micro expressions also are lost due to technology. And thirdly, I think it is very important to understand and appreciate that people need to change their lifestyle.
Well, it looks like we're experiencing a bit of technical difficulty, so hang on. All right, guys, as we try to bring Sheetal back onto the show, please put on your questions for Sheetal as well. All right, we have Giovanna who's joining us from Milan. Hi, Giovanna. Welcome to the show. We're experiencing a technical difficulty, so Sheetal is going to be back with us in a quick moment. And we have 3 free mentoring sessions we're providing with Shital Kakkar, one of India's leading CEO coaches. So if you have any questions for her, this is your time to bring them on and put them on your comment box over here. All right. Hey, Sheetal, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Those are the constraints of technology.
I know
So,
it's part of the technical glitches, right? In the meantime, I was interacting with our listeners. We have Giovanna, who's joining us from Milan. She's one of the top data science enthusiasts in the world. So thank you so much, Giovanna, for
thank
being
you. Yeah. Thank you for being a part of this show. So, yes, I was telling you about the virtual world. I think it's important to understand that communication styles, trends have changed, and we need to adapt to that. Also, we need to socialize. We need to conduct a little more small talk. I think that's important. Thirdly, what is very important, Priyanka, and which I've seen, is that even leadership has had to undergo some level of change. A very critical element which has shown up during the pandemic is the empathy that leaders and team members have to show towards each other. For the first time, we have actually seen people in their personal homes, their personal lives. Many of us have seen a pet or a family member in the background walk past. So we've actually seen the human behind that title. And I think that's very important. So empathy has shown up and it has been wonderful. I think sometimes we've seen certain levels of vulnerability also of our people that we interact with and meet in very formal environments in the office. So yes, multiple things have changed, but I think some are for good and some, of course, we've seen different change. So that's important.
That's awesome. You know, the other aspect, Sheetal, is especially as women leaders and women leaders of color trying to create a career mark for ourselves across the world, what is one advice would you have in terms of projecting our personal brand? All right, looks like we're still experiencing a little bit of technical difficulties. So thanks to our listeners for still staying tuned. We have a couple of our listeners joining in whom I wanted to acknowledge in the meantime. We have Anuja Sanalkar. Hey, Anuja, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for joining us. Let's see if we can get Sheetal back on the line when we get the technical issues resolved. We also have Supriya Kamatagi who's joining us. Hi, Supriya from India. Thanks so much for joining us as well. Yeah, Sheetal gives amazing tips. So glad that you guys are staying tuned as we try to bring her back on the show again. You know, one of the critical aspects that I'm going to talk with Sheetal as part of our talk today is, you know, as part of our personal brand, what can we learn from the poise formula that she's created, which includes how do we engage the listeners on an ongoing basis through our personal strengths, through the way we put ourselves out there on the stage as well. So interesting tidbits that we're going to share. Hey, Sheetal, welcome back. Looks like we are overcoming a lot of our technical barriers today. So,
Sorry.
women.
I have
That's
no
fine.
clue why this is happening, but I'm sorry. So, yes, we were talking about women leaders.
Women
I
of
think,
color, especially.
what is important, and data definitely backs it, is that women have to work harder. But I would like to say a couple of things. One, of course, is that communication, assertive communication, is something that women leaders can definitely look at in a positive way. Secondly, I do believe that power can definitely go with certain level of warmth, because there's certain warmth that comes with being a woman leader, and there's enough data to show that boards that have diversity definitely have much better shareholder returns. So there is a lot of value added over there, but assertive communication, speaking up, is something that we can uniformly practice and invest more in, and feel and agree that likability quotient does not get compromised when you speak up. So that's important. And as I said earlier, that it's critical to have more women in the workplace. And I am a firm believer of hashtag women supporting women. So I always advise women in the workplace that take a younger woman as your mentee, become a mentor for her. A lot of hand holding is needed, especially when they're in their 20s and 30s, to retain them in the workplace. So, yes, I would say two critical elements. One is assertive communication. Don't feel bad about it. And power and warmth can go together. So, it will not compromise on your likability quotient.
That's amazing. Thanks so much, Sheetal. And one of the other aspects I wanted to delve about as part of executive presence is a lot of it depends on your upbringing and the kind of opportunities that you get, depending on the strata of society that you grow. But today, the world has no barriers, right? The income level of your family doesn't define your ambitions. So, what advice would you have for some of our young listeners who are just entering the fields as software engineers or making a mark in whichever domains they are in? How should they stop themselves from setting their own barriers based on their childhood experiences?
Sometimes I feel that we are our worst critic. And I feel that there's magic in everyone which needs to be celebrated. So I always tell young people who are entering the workforce that you're lucky that you're entering at a time when leadership also has undergone multiple changes. 20 years ago, it was an old boys club. Today, that has definitely, and progressive companies are trying their level best to shatter that. Second, of course, is that at one point, there was not much, as I said, diversity, but today, of course, you can come from any background and make it big. But what is important is that, first of all, content is king. So being a super specialist in your own industry and doing a really good job of it is something that you can't compromise on. It's a very competitive world out there. But once you deliver the results, please do not believe that your business results will speak for themselves. Executive presence is how others perceive you for a leadership role and is not directly connected with how good your business results are or you as a professional are. But if others don't perceive you as a leader, many times I've had to work with leaders where the biggest problem was that the management or the board does not perceive them in that role. They have delivered great results. So it's important that you start building your executive presence at an early age and stage. Secondly, please make investments in your networks. The networks that you build in your 20s and 30s are going to pay huge dividends when you are in your 40s and 50s. So interact with people who are decision makers, who are influencers. Be very nice to your peers because they also will be in position of power in their 40s and 50s. So make investments. I firmly believe that networking is like banking. First, you make a deposit and then you withdraw. And that's when you can withdraw in your 40s and 50s.
That's a very important aspect, and I'm so glad you brought it up, Sheetal, because in our world today, we look at instant gratification. Whom can I connect with? Who can open up a door for a job? But it takes up a lot of investment, and it's just like, as you mentioned, depositing in a bank, like planting a sapling and wait until you reap
Yeah.
the fruit, right? So
Yeah.
it's an investment process. And your
Agree
20s,
with.
thank you. And your 20s are the best times to make that investment and figure out where your career is going to go forward. Now, I'm super excited to learn about India's first research-backed model, which is the POISE formula. Tell us a little bit more.
Priyanka, I've been coaching for the last 20 years, and I wanted to understand what is executive presence. Now, all the books that are available in the Indian bookstores were international coaches who had written on executive presence. Of course, a lot of in-depth and research done by them, very distinguished professors, but they had not really understood the Indian workplace. So what I wanted to do was interact with Indian business leaders, and I have had a chance to interact with some of the leading industrialists, some of the private equity partners, some of the venture capitalists, angel investors, HR heads, learning heads, you name them, they are in the book. So I interviewed about 120 to 123 senior professionals, and about 60 of them have given wonderful quotes in the book as well, so that, the readers can learn from their experience. It took me 3 years to come up with the poise formula, and all the research was put together, and finally I came up with the formula as to what is executive presence in the Indian workplace. And the formula is the physical presence, the online presence, the influencer presence, the stage presence, and your engagement presence. So that is the poise formula. And yes, it is India's first research on it, and it's also used by companies as a diagnostic tool. In fact, I tell my my whenever I'm teaching or training or mentoring, that you can use it as a diagnostic tool to understand what are your strengths and what are your gaps, so that you can make investments in the right because I do believe that you are the CEO of your own brand. No one else wants the job, and you can't afford a high powered CEO if you're a regular person and not a celebrity or a big time politician or CEO. So if you're managing your own personal brand, that is very important that you understand that you need to make investments in your brand. All brands need investment, and also little level of self promotion and visibility.
So, as part of the poise formula, which is really very impressive, thank you for working on this and providing it as something that's easier to understand and keep it at the back of our mind. What is one advice you would have for our listeners as an actionable takeaway right away after this episode?
I will give one advice on each of the letters of the poise formula, if that's okay with you.
I would
So the
love that.
P stands for your physical presence. I think it's very important that people understand that when you walk in through the door, before you have even uttered a word, the human brain is constantly thin slicing and passing judgments. So look the best that you can afford, dress appropriately, that's important. Secondly, what is even more important, that wear clothes that add and enhance your confidence levels, because it's psychological and is proven by social psychologists, scientists, that when we know we are looking good, we somehow feel good. Second aspect of the physical is body language. Cultivate the language of a winner. Understand that winners have a good posture, they maintain healthy eye contact, and they definitely, invest in the way they project themselves and their body language. The O, of course, is your online presence, and it's important to understand that people e-meet you before they meet you. So enhance your online presence, put your name into Google and see what shows up. The I is your influencer skill, your authenticity. Effective listening skills are very critical, and your executive maturity, the ability to offer a calibrated response and not get emotional. The S, of course, is your stage presence. In the last 10,000 years, leaders have had to address an audience and articulate a thought, and that's important. The E is your ability to engage an audience. So it's important that you appreciate that how you connect with people adds to your likability quotient, your networking quotient. So I would give one tip on each of the letters, and I hope it benefits the listeners.
That's so generous of you, and thank you. Getting it from Shital listeners is just super awesome, because she's one of the most sought after leadership coaches in India, and I'm so glad she's taken the time to come and directly engage with our listeners and sharing the poise formula right from the leader herself. We have a couple of quick questions from our listeners, which I'm going to flash on the screen. This one is from Giovanna. She would like to know the kind of experience you think we need to sharpen our leadership skills to be hired as a leader. What is one advice you would have for her?
To be perceived as a leader, I think one critical element in today's world is your communication skills. And when I talk about communication, I don't mean basic level communication, but one, understanding and your ability to read the room. So what is expected of you? And secondly, as I said earlier, offering a calibrated response without getting too emotional, understanding what to say, how much to say, and when to completely zip up is very important. And I think in today's world, it's critical skill to build up, something that these schools don't teach you. But yes, experience and working in the environment definitely. Watch people, always have a mentor and always have a role model internally, and watch them in action. It's like a living lab, and you can learn a lot about organization culture, what works, what doesn't work. So observing people who are successful in that organization, because I'm firmly convinced that people only promote after a point people who fit in with the culture. And understanding the culture is a very big investment that you can make.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that response, Sheetal. And thank you, Giovanna, for that question. I'm thinking as a follow-up, Sheetal, what do you do personally? Because you have a very impressive thing that you mentioned is knowing when to stop talking. How do you develop that kind of intuition from your own personal experience, which I'm curious to learn?
I think what's important is listening. Effective listening skills is critical. Secondly, observe the room and being extremely observant on how people are behaving, interacting, their body language, their voice, their tonality. I think tonality is very important. They say 90% of fights in a marriage are due to tone and not due to the words used. So clearly in personal, professional life, tone is very important. So walk into a room and it's the biggest myth is that you have to walk into the room and charm the room and completely take over and create impact. Leaders have to be charismatic. I don't think so. I think leadership trends have changed. Leaders have to be great listeners because a lot of ideas can come from everywhere. Secondly, leaders have to be collaborative. The role of a leader has changed. Today, you're a mentor, a coach, and an influencer. Somebody who actually facilitates and brings out the best in his team. So it's no longer autocratic, but a much more collaborative style of leadership. So it's important that you walk in and actually not take charge, but observe first.
That's a very interesting observation. And what they teach you at schools is very different from what happens in the boardroom, right? Once you step in and face the real world. We have another interesting question from Jyoti. What are some ways you sell your personal brand or self-promote yourself, which is one of the key aspects of poise? What's one advice
Yes.
you have?
Self promotion is very important. Even the biggest brands in the world spend billions of dollars every year promoting themselves. So, one, please don't feel guilty promoting yourself. A lot of people I may say, no, but it looks so pushy, I look so aggressive. What do people think of me? Please walk away from that guilt. You have to promote yourself. But what you have to do is promote yourself subtly. Because if you do it in a crass way or if you're very loud and brash about it, people are not going to it's not going to leave a positive impact. So learn to weave it into your conversation. That means when you speak to your boss, you must definitely tell him two or three things that you achieved in the quarter when you have your performance appraisal or you have a chance to have a drink with him. So you must learn to pepper your conversation with self promotion and don't feel guilty doing it. That's very important. Secondly, it is important that you understand your personal brand. What do you want to project to the world? And I think it's important to synchronize that. You can't be everything to everybody. So, what do you want to be known as? You want to be known as a knowledge person. You want to be known as a go to person. You want to be known as a person who finally reaches that finish line. So, please understand what is your brand and maximize your potential with that. So, I always tell people write down your brand in 4 bullet points. If you can't write it in 4 bullet points, there's going to be absolute confusion and chaos. So stick to your brand. And of course, in the earlier pre-COVID world, I used to tell people that stick it on your soft board and so that it stares at you every day and keeps you, anchored to the 4 words that you use.
I really love the idea of writing those 4 bullet points and anchoring yourself towards it. It's a very powerful mindset shift, right? When you see something on a daily basis, it makes you feel accountable and reminds you that you're going to have a purpose in life. And it's not just for people around you, but for you yourself. And that's something that
Yeah.
especially women tend not to focus on because of just the daily routines of our life.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I'm going to take a couple of quick comments from our guests as well. We have Satya who says, very interesting. Keep up the great work. Thank you, Satya, for your comment.
Thank you.
We have Deepa Sarojam. Thank you, Sheetal. Great tips so far. And thank you, Deepa, for that awesome comment as well. And just a quick reminder to our listeners, we're going to give away 3 free mentoring sessions. So 3 lucky winners. It's your time. So we still have time to put in a question or a comment for your chance to win an exclusive mentoring session with India's leading CEO Coach Shital Kakkar. All right, Sheetal, We've spoken a lot about the work that you do. Let's focus a little bit about your book, Executive Presence, which talks about the POISE formula. It's one of the best-selling book out there. What is your feeling about the impact this book has created with the clients that you deal with?
It was released online because of the pandemic. So while my first book had a lot of flourish, I went on city tours and released the book. This book, of course, had a digital premiere, but it has done exceedingly well. I have received wonderful reviews on LinkedIn, on Amazon. People have written back about how also a lot of my clients have bought multiple copies that they've given to their team. So yes, I've heard a lot of good things about the book, and it's wonderful because it's like a movie or any other piece of art that's there for the audience to see and appreciate. Yes, it's done well. I think it was needed, and I also think that it is important for people to focus on it. So I'm really happy that people are reading the book and they are writing back a lot of questions. And I want to tell your listeners, Priyanka, as well, that I am always available to hold your hand in your professional journey. So if you have a question, not now, but even 6 months, 1 year, 2 years from now, do send me a LinkedIn invite after the session, and you can write to me, and I would love to answer your questions. So I do believe that, as a trainer, as a coach, you have to be available to your audience and to your participants, to your mentees. So I would love to hear from all of you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Sheetal. And can you just wave the book for us, for our listeners who just tuned in?
Yes, here it is. Thank you, Priyanka. Here's the book. It's available in the Kindle version as well as the paperback. And
Awesome.
yes, it is available in US, UK markets as well. It's published by HarperCollins.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sheetal. And it's always impressive to see how you ace the challenges personally, like releasing a book amidst the pandemic. And I believe this book has a lot of valuable content and insights to share. So super excited that we have this book. And we're going to acknowledge a couple of our other listeners as well. We have Rubinia, who's joining us from Denton, Texas. Hi, Rubinia. Welcome to the show. And we have Giovanna. She wants to thank you for sharing your knowledge and your time. And that's one of the best parts about having amazing guests like you, Sheetal, on the podcast, because it's not just a one-time effort. It's more about creating a community where my guests and my listeners can get to learn from each other after the podcast as well. So thank you for being generous in terms of interacting with my listeners post the podcast.
Thank you.
All right, so let's talk about the other side of Sheetal. I know you're an active philanthropist, and you also lead Catalyst, which is focused on mentoring, young leaders from different stratas of the society. Tell us a little bit more about your act of giving back to the community.
Catalyst was started 13 years ago. Women in STEM from lower income strata, purely to bridge the gender gap which exists in the workplace. And they needed support. And we started in a small way, but we've grown 100 times and impacted about 1,200 lives. And some of our first batch women are very highly placed and are doing very well in the corporate world. And they also come back in the Buddy Didi program and help the younger lot. What we really did was two things. One, of course, is that communication skills is critical for success. And people from higher income bracket definitely have it because they go to better schools, their communication, their accent, their vocabulary is so much better. And when they graduate from engineering colleges, the salary they get is much higher, and they are put on a different, their careers on a different trajectory. On the other hand, if you lack those skills, you can be from the best of colleges, but you're in the last decile or the last quartile of campus placements, and your career's on a different path. So we wanted to bridge that. So one, of course, we have a 600-hour proprietary curriculum from year 1 to year 4 of the engineering school, where the girls learn English language, communication, accent polishing, and interviewing skills, general knowledge. Secondly, we felt that people from higher income brackets have their parents, their teachers, their family friends, their entire network as their mentors and guides. But these girls did not have. So we provide each of them a corporate mentor from year 1 to year 4 who helps them with internships and interviewing and is always there for them. And they really appreciate that. And yes, currently we have 650 girls across 4 centers. and they have done very well. We are very proud of our girls, and they have been placed in the largest of corporations and have risen up really well in the corporate, gone up very well in the corporate ladder. So, yes, my Catalyst girls are something I'm really proud of. And I personally think I have learned more from them than they have learned from the program. It's been a huge learning.
Awesome. And I had a chance to look at one of your Catalyst newsletters, the one that released in October, where we profiled one of those girls who really aced her career as an engineer. And she spoke about how mentorship was really crucial because that's something that Catalyst was able to provide. And I'm so glad you're making such an awesome impact through your leadership coaching, through your book, as well as a philanthropist through your nonprofit work as well.
But Priyanka, you've done such good work as a mentor for young people as well. So yes, hats off to you. In spite of doing so many things, you still are available to young people and young students.
Thank you. I really appreciate those kind words. We have a couple more comments from our listeners, which I wanted to share with you. We have one from Deepa, and she says the analogy that you used about how important listening is in our personal and professional lives is something that all of us need to remember. So thank you. And it's great to hear that. And I'm going to put a link to her book as well as part of our podcast episode notes in the comments section. So we'll do that right away. We have another follow-up question from Anuja Sunalkar. She's a CEO of a startup here based in the US as well. And we spoke a little bit about how do you brand yourself digitally in the COVID world. But what do you think, post-COVID world, how do we branch ourselves in such a way so the transition seems seamless from a digital perspective?
Honestly, I have no idea, and I don't think anybody can predict what the post-COVID world will look like. But if I had to bet my money, I would say that we would never really go back to full-time working and pre-COVID era. This is a defining moment in our generation or our professional lives. Although I do believe that a hybrid version will emerge, because after the point, there's only that much that you can do in the digital world. We still need to see people because remote ultimately is equal to aloof, and that is something that is not conducive to building and maintaining relationships. So I think the world post COVID would definitely be a hybrid version where there would be face to face interactions and there would be, of course, remote interactions. Technology will make remote as real as possible, but you still need to meet people to connect with them. So, I think nobody can predict, but I do believe that after a point, you will need to have superb face to face skills, executive presence, and you would also need to work on your virtual presence and visibility in the virtual world. I think a strong online presence is very important because, as I said earlier, people meet you before they meet you. And based on your profile and the way you present yourself online, they may decide to do business with you, retain you, hire you, or not interact with you. So I think it's important that everybody gives it a thought and curates their online presence. Don't leave it to chance. Second piece of advice I give youngsters, whoever are in the audience, that you must definitely create opaque walls between your personal life and professional life. Understand the privacy settings of both the platforms, social media, and at least you should master what you want to show the world because people are constantly on the internet and there's so much out there. And the net has an elephant's memory. Once you put something, it'll be very difficult to take it off. So please make sure that what is visible to whom is something that you're curating and are building awareness.
That's amazing. Thanks so much, Sheetal. And it's very important to have those barriers that separate your personal and your professional life. And the other interesting aspect is it's like a sales pitch, right? Your elevator pitch, where the person that you're going to do business with has already made up his or her mind by the time they meet you. And this happens through your personal brand that's out there for the world to see. So you're able to control it. And why not do it?
And in today's world, there's so much business being done in the virtual world because we don't have a choice. But people have formed opinions and passed judgment. So at least be aware of what's out there.
That's awesome. So we have a fun rapid fire round for you, Sheetal. Are you ready for it?
Yes.
So you tell me the first thing that comes to your mind in one word when I say the following. We'll start with who's Sheetal's role model?
Um, My role model. I have many role models, but in the US context, I really admire Michelle Obama. Yes.
How about the
So
Indian
for
context?
Indian, as a global Indian, I admire Indra Nui and Raghuram Rajan. And in the Indian context, there are lots of business leaders that I admire.
That's awesome. Indra Nooyi is my role model as well. For every young woman, Indra Nooyi has put herself out there. It's very inspiring. So thanks for sharing
Yeah.
that as well. What is Sheetal's brand in one word?
Civility and conducting yourself with maturity.
The way you conduct yourself with such grace and humility speaks for itself. So kudos on that. What does happiness mean to you, Sheetal?
Sleeping peacefully at night and knowing I've done a good day's work.
I'm quite sure you feel that way right after this podcast.
Yes, I'm sure.
What is one fun thing about Sheetal you haven't shared anywhere else and is exclusive to our Curryup Startup Podcast listeners?
That in my family circles, I'm known as a comedian. So I make people laugh, but that's something that most people don't know about me.
That's pretty cool. What is your native language and one word to describe yourself in it?
Native language is Punjabi, but I'm very conversant better with Hindi and of course English. So yes,
And what is one word you would describe yourself in that language?
um, my name means Sheetal, but I'm not calm. So I'm anti Sheetal in terms of personality. Maybe I needed that name to make me calmer.
That's pretty cool. It's always nice how sometimes our names are like polar opposites to our
Yeah.
personalities as well. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's pretty cool. So this was an amazing show, and I'm going to take in a final quick set of comments here. Deepa Sarojam again, she agrees on Michelle and Indra Nooyi as role models. Uh, those are all the times that we had for the questions. So if you have any further questions, feel free to leave them in comments or connect with Sheetal herself. We'll post a link to her LinkedIn profile on our comments so you can connect with her. So Sheetal, before we wrap up, we're going to talk two things. One is your experience being on Curryup Startup Podcast, and why do you think people should listen to this episode?
I think you're doing a wonderful job. You have crossed the milestone of 50. This is the 52nd episode you had mentioned to me. So, congratulations. You're doing a superb job of amplifying Asian voices. I've heard several podcasts of yours after we connected. So, I think Curry Startup Podcast is a wonderful opportunity for people to hear diverse voices, Asian voices, and subscribe to it on YouTube, on LinkedIn, and various other platforms that Priyanka has worked very hard. And there are various aspects of. I particularly like the topics that you choose. They are extremely, they are very likable. They are very important in people's life, and they will definitely create impact. So yes, you're very passionate about the topics that you choose, and I think they're very impactful. So, all the listeners, three cheers to Priyanka. She's done a superb job. I'm really honored to be here. And keep up the good work, Priyanka.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sheetal. Really appreciate the kind words coming from you. It means a lot to, as we are making strides to create an impact as what you've done. And I really appreciate you coming onto this podcast. And I know our
Thank
listeners are super excited to know who the three lucky winners are for the mentoring sessions. Are you excited, Sheetal, to see who these winners are?
Yes, I am.
Awesome. So here's the deal. We're going to pick three lucky winners based on the questions and comments you've shared on this stream here today. And I really appreciate all of you guys for tuning in. You're going to get a free 30-minute exclusive one-on-one mentoring session with Sheetal. So we're going to announce the lucky winners. Let's have the drum roll. And the first lucky winner is Deepa Sarojam. Congrats, Deepa. And if you're still here, put in a quick comment so we know that you've heard that you're one of the lucky winners. And drum roll for our second lucky winner. We're going to go in for Jyoti, who's joined us on YouTube. Hey, Jyoti. So Jyoti is from India. So Jyoti, please connect with me on LinkedIn so I get a chance to connect you back to Sheetal as well. Congratulations, Jyoti. Drum roll for the third winner. All right, let's see who is that lucky person. All right, it's Anuja Sunalkar, who's again from the US. So, congratulations, Anuja. Congratulations, Jyoti, and congratulations, Deepa. She says yes. I'm super excited. And do you have any thoughts for the lucky winners, Sheetal?
Thank you. I look forward to interacting with you. And Priyanka is going to connect us. And thank you so much. Really looking forward. And thanks for your questions.
That's awesome. We have a yay from Jyoti as well. So, congratulations, Jyoti. Congratulations, Deepa. And we'll be connecting you shortly. And there goes Anuja. All right, so you have your three lucky winners. We're super excited to have this mentoring session. Do you have
Thank
any other
you.
parting thoughts, Sheetal, to our listeners?
Um, no, I would just say stay safe, stay healthy, stay positive. These are tough times. These too will pass. And, wishing everybody all the best for the Diwali, which is for the Indian community. And a very happy New Year's to all the listeners. All the best. And I'm sure 2021 will bring a better year. So stay safe, stay healthy, stay positive. Thank you.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Sheetal. And this was such an
Thank
impressive episode. I've learned a lot of wonderful things from you as well. And I'm so glad we have this platform to connect our wonderful listeners back, to amazing people like you. So thank you again. And
you.
thanks again, Deepa. Thanks, Anuja. Thanks, Jyoti, Giovanna, for all being part of our show today. So the next episode is going to come up next Sunday, which is our 53rd episode. So do continue to stay tuned to our podcast episodes. Curryup Startup Podcast is a podcast to spotlight world-class Asian entrepreneurs, C-suite executives, and leaders who provide insights from their personal journey to inspire you. And this is your host, Priyanka Komala, signing off. Until another episode with another interesting guest. And do remember to subscribe to us by following me, Priyanka Komala, on LinkedIn for your LinkedIn Live notifications, as well as our Curryup Startup Podcast page, YouTube, Twitter, and your favorite podcast streaming platforms.